Welcome into the Cover 5 podcast. I am your host, Jordan Vanek. You can find me on Twitter at Jordan Vanek DFS. I am joined by my co-host, Mark Garcia, at HiloFF on Twitter. How are you doing today, Hilo?
I'm doing so good, man. We got that little taste from Thursday Night Football, and we are ready to get into the meat and potatoes and just get into the heart of the NFL season, particularly from DFS. I'm so excited, dude.
I cannot wait. This obviously is the Cover 5 podcast where we will be covering 5 games from a DFS perspective. This week, me and Hilo chose 4 of these games, and the last one is the Miami Chargers game because that's going to be the most popular one on the entire slate, given that high point total. Let's get into it. Hilo, kick it off with your first game, Tampa Bay and Minnesota. I was shocked to see this one on the sheet.
Yes, sir. So we can expect the field to have some interest in this game, but it's probably going to be in the onesie twosies, right? It's probably going to be Justin Jefferson. He's amongst the top 3 priced wide receivers on the slate. And we might see some trickle down, some people trying to get cute from there, some people trying to play pivots to get to Alexander Mattison in that mid-range of running back tier. And then TJ Hawkinson might be the only remaining like high price tight end on the slate because everyone's getting hurt. And we didn't have Travis Kelce on the slate. He wouldn't have been on the slate, and we wouldn't have had Darren Waller on the slate regardless. So the pickings for the high-priced tight ends are already slim. So because we have a bunch of salary kind of in week 1, or player pricing is not as tight, which it feels like you're playing with more than 50K salary, we're going to see people find their way to TJ Hawkinson. Beyond that, who is going to be playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Like nobody. We were talking about this before we went live, and I could feel the scoff, the soul scoff, we'll call it, where you're just like your soul is eating itself when I brought up this game environment. But I think, and we don't know, but we have a good idea of kind of how the Buccaneers are going to operate. They're going to look to slow things down. They're going to primarily be trying to march the field with their possessions because that eats up clock and that keeps their defense more fresh. And they have a guy in Baker Mayfield who has been prone to mistakes and all kinds of things. But when you dig deeper, we have a new offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay in Dave Canales, who comes over from the quarterbacks coach in Seattle, where he oversaw the 9th-year breakout of one Geno Smith. So I'm not saying like that was him only and he had his hands in Geno and he caused that to happen, but like it's notable at least at the bare minimum. And so we have this kind of overall sense from the field that we know exactly who Baker Mayfield is. And we've been there, done that with him. We know he's kind of this bottom barrel NFL starting quarterback. What if that's not true? How do we expect Tampa Bay to respond when they're getting punched in the face? And a lot of my interest, it starts with this game environment with Justin Jefferson, because we kind of know what to expect from the Tampa Bay defense. We can expect lower blitz rates. We can expect them to settle in the front 7 to try and cramp down on the run. And we can expect a high rate of cover 3 behind. Look at Justin Jefferson, man. Last season, he was the 3rd highest targets per route run and yards per route run against cover 3. He put up 15.1 yards per reception against cover 3. So yes, like this game environment is likeliest to blow up through Justin Jefferson. But what happens to Tampa if that happens? So like I can play Justin Jefferson and not be afraid of the expected exposure from the field and do it in a way that nobody's simply going to be doing. Primarily, like I like Justin Jefferson as the bringback. I'll be playing. It sounds so silly to even say, but I'll be playing Baker Mayfield. I think you can pair him with Mike Evans. I think you can pair him with Trey Palmer. I might be doing both because both of those wide receivers are going to be playing on the perimeter, likely either in cover 1 or cover 3 based on those tendencies of Brian Flores in Minnesota. And so they're going to see like this relative island coverage against a first-year cornerback and a second-year cornerback away from Byron Murphy, who is likely going to see the most of Chris Godwin. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. We also have a running back in Rashad White who we're expecting 75, 80% of the offensive snaps. He's reportedly the guy in Tampa. So there's just a lot going on from a concentration of targets standpoint, from a game environment play. And if you're playing Justin Jefferson, which a lot of us are going to be doing, I think an interesting way to do that is to play him as the bringback in that game environment bet.
I I agree with you that I think that Tampa Bay can have some pieces from the game be in a top tier GPP lineup because Brian Flores is just going to send the house and he's just going to put his guys on islands and we'll see how that kind of goes. And it's brought me to have some interest in Mike Evans. We even talked about him when we made our lineups. He was the one off that I put in my Trevor Lawrence lineup to get a little bit different. But in this particular matchup, he's definitely in the plus side of things. He can definitely get it done down the field. I'm not sure how to feel about Trey Palmer. I know how good of a preseason he's had. I can see where you're at, where if you're double stacking a Baker Mayfield lineup, you're able to jam in a lot of the studs, including Justin Jefferson, who he's in a great matchup. I don't think there's really that many bad matchups for Justin Jefferson. Like, even if a team's playing too high, it's like he's still going to eat. I think TJ Hawkinson becomes more of a factor. I don't think Hawkinson's in a great matchup at all in this one, just because of the way Tampa's structured and their linebackers are phenomenal. Like that is the best part of their team. I don't like this Alexander Madison narrative that he's really like in a spot where he's going to be great. I know he's going to get touches, but I don't see him getting anything against this Todd Bowles front. Vita Vea is an absolute menace in the middle of the defenses. So I agree with you in the way that you're playing this game. It's not something I am going to be doing, but I do think that it's justifiable because I will be targeting down the field shots against the Brian Flores defense throughout the entire season. I'm just not doing it with Baker Mayfield in week 1.
Soft, dude. Come on to the dark side. Let's go. Let's ride. No, I mean, there's a big juicy like $100 Millie Maker that I think that kind of play is perfect. You look at and I think you tweeted this out, like the cost and comparable costs of like a quarterback and 2 primary pass catchers today. A lot of the elites are going to be in the 22K to 18K range in combined salary. If you pair up Baker Mayfield with any 2 of his primary pass catchers, not being both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, you're looking at a combined salary under 14K. So there's a lot of things that opens up as far as roster construction goes. And you're talking about what is it going to take to win, like total score wise to win in week 1. Typically with the lower player pricing, we're looking at like 230, 235 plus. So you're on like a 4.5 to 5 salary multiplier. 5x of a 14K, you're looking at like 22 points per player in that 3-person player block. So that is not outside the realm of possibilities for Baker and Mike Evans and Trey Palmer or Rachaad White to all score like 20 to 22 points in this matchup.
That makes a lot of sense. We're going to take it over to my game now because I have not much to add with that Tampa Bay Minnesota game. You got the Bengals traveling to Cleveland to face this Jim Schwartz defense that me and you have talked about extensively throughout this offseason. And I've got an article about Jim Schwartz and Brian Flores, who I talked about in April about defenses that I will be targeting in this upcoming season. We will have Joe Burrow against a defense that's going to play a lot of single high coverage and blitz, which is prime matchup for him. This is a spot where I think Joe Burrow has the upside to throw for 400 yards. We saw him obviously do it against Wink Martindale's defenses 2 years ago. Wink is a little bit more psychotic on the sense of how much he blitzes, but Jim Schwartz will definitely bring some pressure. And then on top of it, he's going to trust his corners on island spots. Denzel Ward is going to be playing this game. He was on the injury report throughout the week. Doesn't really matter for me because as great of a unit as they are, I don't think they can match up with this Chiefs or Bengals pass catching room. Jamar Chase in particular, he averages over 3 yards per route run against single high coverages. He's one of the more dominant players in the NFL against it, and he doesn't need it down the field. He can get it right off the line of scrimmage and go 60 to 70 yards. For me in this spot, I think people aren't going to get to Burrow. I think it's going to be a lot of Herbert, and I think it's going to be a lot of Tua. And then I think that on top of it, you have all these running quarterbacks that aren't that far off from Joe Burrow. We know Joe Burrow's going to have to get it done through the air. That's how he's built. And in a spot where I think he's going to be able to get it done in a high rate, it's going to be easy to bring back, Irv Smith, it's going to be easy to pair him with Irv Smith, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Like, I'm fine pairing any of the 2. I think Jamar Chase should be the one you get to, even at the salary cost. I know you just talked about it. It's just he's correlated to Joe Burrow's huge game. So on the bring back side of things, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because I know a lot of people aren't getting to Nick Chubb because his price is scary. But Nick Chubb's at a spot where he's the only running back in this backfield. I know they talked about how they're going to get other guys, to spell him out and to catch passes. But what if Nick Chubb just starts catching passes? What if he just goes through the Derrick Henry treatment where he's the guy on the field, he's consistently on it, and he just ends up catching passes similar to what Derrick Henry did because they didn't have the James White, Deion Lewis guy anymore, which was Kareem Hunt for them in this system, and in a spot where nobody's getting to him. And it's a run back that's extremely expensive, but at a position right now that I don't see a ton of guys breaking the slate like he potentially could just because of the full workload. Obviously, he pairs well with the fact that I'm trying to get Burrow to have the explosive game. And feel free to pick Amari Cooper as well. Obviously, 5,400 on DraftKings, receiver position. He's the easy run back. I think building lineups where you structure around a Nick Chubb run back will be a lot more unique than it should be. And in this contest, it's a week one spot. You can find the salary, like you talked about. It's a little easier to get these lineups together because of the salary just being a little bit weak right now. How do you feel about this Browns Bengals game?
Yeah, I think just the general consensus from the field is the Browns are going to be a tough click just because they are extremely non-concentrated. They don't have they have no less than 4 pass catchers that are viable contributors to an NFL offense. Amari Cooper, David Njoku. Njoku is interesting too because he's in this like weird nebulous range of player pricing at tight end that he's just probably not going to see a ton of interest in as well. And then DPJ and Elijah, you have all these pass catchers that are viable like NFL talents in Cleveland now. And we have this massive uncertainty with the running back situation, primarily surrounding Nick Chubb as well. And if you look at like Nick Chubb's historic numbers against this Bengals defense and this Lou Anarumo defense, he's basically shredded them. And obviously it's like, what does historical numbers mean? Not a whole lot, but when it's consistent against the same defensive scheme, it begins to carry a little bit additional weight. So if you had pass catching on top of that, which again, we don't know, but it is a potential possibility. We know Jerome Ford is there. We know that he's been struggling with injuries. We also know he's off of the injury report and he's going to play likely. But yeah, there's just a lot of uncertainty around this Browns team. So I think a very, very sharp way to be attacking this game is to kind of go all into it. We're going to see people want to roster pieces from this game, but we're not going to see a lot of people kind of dive headfirst into this game saying that it's going to score 70 combined points, which is within its range of outcomes. It's also a divisional game and it could, fall way flat of that, score 42 combined points. But the point is, I want to be placing myself in position that are within a game environment's range of outcomes that the field is not. And if they're just not going to be stacking up that game, I'll definitely have interest in it.
Yeah, that's the way I'm going head first into it just because of the way that I kind of see it shooting out. And I feel like it's similar to that Chiefs Browns game that was an opener 2 years ago where you had like all Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey were priced extremely high up. And then you had Nick Chubb as well, who was in like the 7 to 8K range. I remember the winning lineup featured Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, and Nick Chubb all in the same game because Mahomes killed it through the air. Kelsey and Tyreek Hill were the reason why. And then Nick Chubb was carrying the Browns offense, similar to the way that I kind of think he's going to go about it in this one. Maybe Jarvis as well was a part of the winning construction and the winning lineup in some of the big contests that I was playing in. But let's kick it to your next game. You're taking it with the Raiders and the Broncos going head to head. Which side are you all in on?
I think the answer is yes. I think you can be both. But it's simply another area or another game environment that I think is kind of in line with what we talked about in the last game environment. We expect or we know that there's kind of a lot of uncertainty with both of these teams. How much is Josh Jacobs going to carry the load after signing 7 days ago? How is this Raiders offense going to look with a new quarterback? So there's a lot of uncertainty with Las Vegas, and then you look at Denver, and it's like they have the most uncertainty of any team entering week one. How's their offense going to look under Sean Payton? Is Russ cooking or is he cooked? Is Jerry Jeudy going to play? How are they going to handle the tight end snaps? What happens to the tight end snaps if Jerry Jeudy doesn't play? Are they going to go to higher rates of 12 personnel? Likely, in my mind. But and then it's like, and they have a rookie wide receiver who could see an 85, 90% snap rate at bare min price. That is where the field is going to be going in this game. It's like they're going to be playing Marvin Mims and maybe a sprinkle of Cortland Sutton. You look at expected rostership numbers, it's like no one's playing anybody from Las Vegas, and no one's playing anybody not named Marvin Mims or Cortland Sutton from Denver. So look at like historical games of these two teams. And yes, there's a lot changing with Sean Payton, but both of these teams have the talent to be able to send a game environment into the stratosphere. Like the way that I like to think about these game environments is, yes, like coaching tendencies and pace of play and all these other things contribute to a game environment blowing up. But all those need a spark. Everything else in the game environment needs a spark. And what a spark is in a game environment is talent, is who can create a situation that sends that game environment into the moon. Like last year, the best example that I can think of is the Baltimore Ravens and Miami Dolphins game in week 2. The spark from that game was a Devin Duvernay opening kickoff return for a touchdown. That game was just set up to ignite from there. We knew we had the pieces regarding pace of play, regarding coaching tendencies, regarding talent, but it was the kick returner that sparked that game. And he's a Pro Bowl kick returner. But that's what I'm talking about, is like there has to be some spark in order to send a game environment into something that like you had to have in order to win. And this game has those players.
Yeah, no, it definitely does have the ability to kind of go that way. I've been in love with Marvin Mims for a long time. Obviously, he's going to be pretty chalky, which is a little bit sad for the people who've been in on Marvin Mims for a while. But I actually do like Michael Mayer a lot in this game. The tight end position is just not great, and for me, I've seen Vance Joseph coach defense for a very long time. The one position it just always happens to be the one that he fails at is covering tight ends. Jimmy Garoppolo, red zone towards Michael Mayer is kind of the way that I've been thinking about getting pieces of this game. If you play two rookies, if you go Michael Mayer and Marvin Mims in this game, that's 5,800. Like Marvin Mims catches the long touchdown, Michael Mayer gets the red zone touchdown. You're in great shape with, even if this game shoots out, you have two of the probably chalky pieces, not Michael Mayer, but Marvin Mims will be the chalky piece. And you saving some salary to construct your lineups elsewhere and get to that Joe Burrow stack that I've been highly alluded to. But overall, I do think that this game is one that you should be targeting in some extent and definitely consider it. Are you on the Josh Jacobs side of this one because of obviously the big games he had, or are you thinking Vance Joseph is going to be able to kind of slow that run game a little bit down?
I'm most interested in Devontae Adams, talking about specific players from the Raiders. He's priced right below the top 3 at 7,900, with only 3 wide receivers being priced above 8K, being Justin Jefferson at 8.8, Tyreek Hill at 8.2, and Jamar Chase at 8.1. And because of those pricing psychology dynamics, quick plug, releasing the same time this is released, go check out an article that I'm releasing on 33rd Team called Handling the Chalk, which is going to talk about this situation as well in greater detail. But this idea of pricing psychology in week 1 is going to be one of the higher contributing factors to roster construction. And when we talk about having this extra, feeling like you're building with 52,000 in salary or 53,000 in salary, you feel like you have enough monies to allocate somewhere. And in today's NFL game, it's like, well, the most certainty that we kind of get are at wide receiver and quarterback. So that's where I expect it to. The fact that Devontae Adams is priced just below that. I'm most interested from this game environment in attacking Broncos stacks and bringing it back with a guy like Devontae Adams, because I think that there is I think a lot of it has to do with Sean Payton, who he is as a person, as a coach, and the fact that he cares so much about what people care or what people think about him. Like he's not going to say that, but like he cares. He cares what his image is. He cares about getting his players records. I mean, he was the reason that probably Drew Brees is not breaking NFL records without Sean Payton as his head coach. He's calling game plans to like get his players to these records and reach incentives and all this stuff. So that's kind of like, if I think there's a driving factor or force in this game, I think it's actually going to be Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. And in that same sense, probably the most intriguing, and I don't know if I'm going to get here in my Russ stacks, but probably the most intriguing piece from this game is Greg Dulcich. And that's only asterisk caveat time. That's only if Jerry Jeudy misses, because I would then expect increased rates of 12 personnel. And we know that he is the higher targets per route run guy. He is the guy that's going to be running from the slot if he and Trotman are on the field together. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that situation before we get to your next game?
Greg Dulcich, I do agree with you on completely. If Jeudy plays, I'm not on Dulcich. If he doesn't, he should just get more usage. The only thing that I'm like terrified of is he actually going to use him in the red zone, or is this going to be a situation where you see the athletic tight end, do the athletic stuff, get you, 4 catches, 40 yards, and you're like, great. And then here comes Adam Trotman being big and just like, hey, throw me the ball in the end zone. Like, I'm here.
Yeah.
be Will Disley, pretty much, for Russell Wilson. That's the way I describe like Adam Trotman in this offense right now. But I don't have much else to add, so I'll go to the next game that I've got with the Tennessee Titans and the New Orleans Saints. Speaking of, Sean Payton, obviously now not with them and hasn't been with them for the 2 years, but the person who's coming in will be Derek Carr, and he is one of the quarterbacks that has made my player pool. You'll catch all of that on Saturday when this probably releases. You'll see my main slate GPP article out, and Derek Carr is going to make the player pool because I am going to be double stacking Derek Carr this weekend. You can do it in a variety of ways. Obviously, we know the Tennessee Titans, they are bad at defending the deep ball. Chris Olave, ton of air yards. Rashid Shaheed is a deep threat. I think that is a great way to pair for Derek Carr because they don't it's an easy way to get away from Marvin Mims. And then on top of it, Derek Carr is not coming in very popular across some of the sites that I've looked at. And he has the ability to throw for over 300 yards and get multiple touchdowns in this game. The other player, speaking of multiple touchdowns, Michael Thomas and Juwan Johnson. I think I don't want to play Shaheed with Olave in this matchup, just because I don't think there's going to be a ton of 20-plus yard catches in this game. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of red zone looks in this offense. And when they're in the red zone, Juwan Johnson and Michael Thomas are probably going to be the favorites when it comes to red zone targets. I also don't have much interest in Jamal Williams. He's coming in a little bit too popular for me for a guy that I do expect to play a lot. I don't expect him to get 20 to 25 carries. I know he's going to get a lot of goal line looks just because that's who he is. But I also think this passing offense has the ability to throw the ball in the red zone. And if I'm playing Derek Carr, I'm obviously wanting them to throw the ball. On the flip side, there's 2 players that I want to run it back with. It's either Derrick Henry or Treylon Burks. Obviously, Derrick Henry is going to be the one that's projected more points. And obviously, Derrick Henry is probably not going to be that great of a popular this weekend, just because this game environment isn't something that I see a lot of people talking about. Derek Carr is not super popular. Derrick Henry is in a matchup where he's on the road and it's in a dome, and Derrick Henry is looked at as a guy that only runs the ball. Derrick Henry catches the football now. It's one of those things that he is kind of game script proof at this point in his career. He's been resting all preseason. He's getting his first, chance at getting 20 to 25 touches. The Saints haven't played a running back like Derrick Henry. They've never played him in his entire career. They've lost a lot of guys up front in this offense, so they're relying on some rookies, some younger players, and they're just not as deep as years past. Mario Davis is like 34, 35 years old right now. He's phenomenal. He's still playing at a high all-time level, but tackling Derrick Henry for 4 quarters in this one isn't exactly something that's great. I also don't think this Tennessee offensive line is a great blocking unit from a pass protection perspective. But with Derrick Henry, that's a little bit, you get the run established in this offense, and you set up play action. You set up the deep plays to Treylon Burks, who I think in this matchup will avoid Marshawn Lattimore. how much interest do you have in the Tennessee and New Orleans game?
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations this week where I think you have to account for one player in some way or another. And I think that player is Chris Olave. Now, when I say you have to account for him, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to play him, but you have to think through the ways in which he would fail to put up a top point per dollar kind of salary multiplier. He's priced at only 6.5. He's not expected, and this kind of threw me off a little bit. Around the industry, he's not expected to carry a lot of interest. And it's a guy who's hovering around 10 to 12%, depending on where you look.
Yep.
And the focus of the field is appearing to be on Jamal Williams. And while that makes sense from a workload perspective, they don't have anybody else. Kendre Miller is, I don't know if I saw that he was ruled out, but he was still not practicing.
Yeah. I don't think he's playing in this one.
Yeah, so with the suspension to Alvin Kamara and everything else they have going on in the backfield in New Orleans, the field is just placing their certainty in volume at a price tag around 5,100, something like that.
Yep.
So if the field is going there, but the clear best on paper play is Chris Olave, like inherent leverage can be built by simply playing the best on paper play, which is Chris Olave. But beyond that, I think because his range of outcomes per his price is so strong on this slate, I think he's a player that we have to account for in some way. And that could be that we play him. That could be that we bet on those touchdowns coming through other means or the yardage. So an example of the yardage coming in other means is if they complete a couple deep passes to Rashid Shaheed. The touchdowns, you mentioned a couple of those guys, Jawan Johnson, Michael Thomas. What about Taysom Hill? And this is what's really I'm losing sleep over this, dude. Help me out. How are they going to utilize this like queen chess piece that they're going to be expected to move all around the formation in a game where they have one NFL ready running back?
Yeah, they're probably going to put him at running back.
That's what I'm thinking. So like, is there a scenario where Taysom Hill sees 8 to 12 carries and see some targets and maybe throws a pass or two? I don't know, maybe. And he's in this weird nebulous pricing range, 3,700 on DK, where no one's going to kind of be going there because we have a rookie tight end who Christian Watson was just ruled out, and in Musgrave, who is priced at 2,900. So people are going to go down there all the way. And then people are going to want to, because we have this little bit of extra salary, to be paying for Tyler Higbee at 48 and be paying for Hawkinson. It's like he's kind of in this mid-range where people are kind of just going to overlook him, and people don't want to play the perennial troll because he just trolls everybody. Like if you play him, he's going to get -3 points, and if you he's just going to take all the kneel downs. And if you don't play him, he's going to go for 42 points. It's like, what do I do with that, man? Well, my answer is like, he's kind of interesting this week. And I think he can be played as a one-off, and it's a way to account for Chris Olave. I think he can be played in a roster that kind of plays homage or plays into this game environment. So he's the most interesting piece, and I'm losing sleep, dude. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, now that you said it, it just makes me think you're about to say some sick stuff where you're going to go ahead and be like, hey, we're going to play Taysom Hill and Rashid Shaheed for some reason. I was scared that you were going to go that route and think that Taysom Hill throws a touchdown to Rashid Shaheed off play action, which is very possible. I've seen it. It's ruined me. It has ruined me with I think the article I actually took for the format of my main slate article, I think was my week 15 article last year. And I saw Andy Dalton as one of the stacks that I wrote up with Chris Olave. I forgot who they were playing at the time. And I was just like, I think Rashid Shaheed caught a 50-yard touchdown in that game. And I learned who he was. I think Taysom Hill is a very interesting play if you're not getting to it. Obviously, he's probably going to be a part of the game plan. And tight end's a nightmare right now with all the injuries that have happened, with all the injuries that are still happening. Obviously, Mark Andrews, we don't even know if he's going to play. And if he doesn't, then Isaiah Likely becomes like an auto at that point. 3K. Like 3K Isaiah Likely is a prime matchup for this one. But for me, it's just the tight end position has a lot of variance in general. You're depending on a lot of touchdowns. There's not many guys that get a lot of looks. So, yeah, Taysom Hill, 3,700, I guess, is a is a viable option. Obviously, I don't want to hear that with me playing Derek Carr stacks, but
Yeah,
I
it's a
do think
sicko.
that it's a sicko play for sure. I think if you're playing the $5 milli, go for it. I don't think you should be playing that in contests that are single entry. Don't That is not what we are prescribing here for
Don't tell me what to
this.
do, man.
Oh my god, you sicko. Um Speaking of stuff, we're going to get to our last game on the slate. It's the Miami Dolphins taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Teron Armstead just got ruled out for this matchup, which means this is a game environment that I will not be playing a ton of. I know that it was the highest over under. I know that these two teams are a lot of great pieces, a lot of explosiveness. But when it came to me and the way that I built, again, I took Joe Burrow, which is a guy that I have over Justin Herbert and Tua, who are slightly cheaper. And I pointed out today that you can afford, if you're going to try to play the Tua side, and we're going to go Tua, Waddle, and Tyreek Hill, you can afford Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase for that exact same price. I would much rather have the other side of things just because the game environment isn't as played and it's not going to be as popular as that Tua side, which even though Tua is not projected to be a ton of popularity right now, I still expect that to be a little bit higher as we get closer to Sunday. I think it's counting for Raheem Mostert to be the only running back on the slate. Salvin Ahmed and I believe Devon A-Chain have practiced in full this week, which means I think that the Raheem Mostert percentage will come down. But overall, I think this is a spot where we're going to see Vic Fangio, who's a great defensive coordinator, put on a show with the defense that they have. And on the flip side, without Teron Armstead, Khalil Mack and Bosa, man, those are scary defensive ends to be facing. I know that they could get the ball out quick. I know Tyreek Hill's super fast, but this is a defense that gave a lot of problems to them. And I want to shout out the podcast that we just had get going with Andy Benoit and Greg Cassell. You need to take a look at it because they talked about this Miami offense and then they talked about how the Chargers stopped them. They mentioned that Michael Davis, the corner that's big, strong, whatever, at that point in the time, he wasn't really pressing people. Their defense that was playing the Vic Fangio scheme where it's a little bit more off coverage, a little bit rotational, a little bit mix and match, not necessarily getting in your face. And then all of a sudden against Miami, they came out and Mike Davis pressed on basically every snap. And it gave them fits. They were able to get one over the top to Tyreek Hill, but overall, it was a problem for Mike McDaniel. I'm interested to see the chess match between these two. Obviously, Mike McDaniel hired the Chargers defensive coordinator to be his linebacker coach now. So he's familiar with how they game plan things. But overall, I'm not targeting this environment much just because of the popularity. How are you feeling about this one, Hilo?
Yeah, so let's continue the discussion of Chris Olave, where it was his range of outcomes is so strong that we have to more or less account for it in some fashion. Maybe even Calvin Ridley is in that discussion this week, where we have to account for how these players would fail if they fail, because they're highly unlikely per their range of outcomes and their price to fail at that profile. The flip side of that is we're adding additional outs to failure, we'll call it, in this game environment because of the defensive coordinators, because of the fact that these teams don't play each other that all often. There's some interesting dynamics as far as I don't feel personally that I have to account for this game environment on every roster I'm playing. Very different than like Minnesota's offense. I feel like I have to be accounting for that offense in this week, in this potential game environment on every roster. I don't have that feeling from this one because I think those additional outs to failure that include the defenses and the defensive coordinators and all the money Miami sunk into the defensive side of the football this offseason, all those things kind of come together to provide additional avenues to failure. And if the field is just going to be so certain that this is the game you had to have, it's I won't say it's very easy because it goes against human nature, but I want to be looking for ways to play this slate differently. We'll just leave it like that.
Yeah, that's very fair. And that's kind of how I am looking at it. But before we wrap up our first, Cover 5 show, please subscribe to the channels, podcast. We have a lot of great things on the way. Go check out that Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff episode that aired before that Thursday night football game where Amon-Ra was almost unguardable and could have had another deep one if Jared Goff would have trusted
Dude,
him down the
he
field.
could have put up 150, man.
Oh yeah, no, he was unguardable in that one. It was awesome to see. Happy to have him on the team scoring the first touchdown of the year. It's pretty awesome to be a part of. But Hilo, who is your guy that breaks the slate this weekend?
It's Mike Evans, man. At Mike Evans at 1.5% rostership.
That is a great call. I will buy into that one. Not buying into Baker. You can't make me. The
If he
player
breaks
for
the slate, who throws him the football, dude?
Oh, come on. It's Kyle Trask halftime bench slot. It's perfect. I mean, Chris Godwin will, come at quarterback, launch it down the field. Something else.
Left-handed.
I
Yeah.
don't know. But the guy I actually have is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is the one where you don't have Christian Watson. You possibly don't have Dubes. You have a good O-line against the Bears defense line. That's not good. I know you could probably just run the ball with A.J. Dillon a ton, but I think that Aaron Jones at 6,300, he's your best player. And this LaFleur, Shanahan, all these guys, I can't get away from that 6,300 price tag with a lot of uncertainty at the running back position overall this week. It's a weird group, and Aaron Jones is obviously going to be one of those guys. Like, I can't believe so many people were slept on Aaron Jones this year. It's like, well, this is a good matchup for him, especially with Christian Watson just not playing in it. But who is your favorite value of the slate?
First of all, I like that call a lot.
Nice.
I'm going to be playing that. I'll drink to that. I don't have a drink. I wish I do now. My favorite value, the same team, dude. I think that the field is so certain that that Marvin Mims is going to be the guy that unlocks the slate. Now you can just play whoever you want because you play Marvin Mims. Even if Jerry Jeudy plays, I don't necessarily think that his range of outcomes as a kind of one-trick pony-esque type player at this stage in his career. He can improve on that. He's kind of just a downfield guy. I mean, 20 yards per reception in college, you have to be just running deep every freaking time. And that's basically what he does. But there's upside in that. But that does not mean that there is not downside in that. You can get the exact same profile in Trey Palmer. Let's go, dude. You can get the exact same profile in Trey Palmer. Similar uncertainty, similar range of outcomes, except Trey Palmer is actually a more well-rounded wide receiver that also runs deep. So you get additional floor and you get access to a similar ceiling. Dude, help me out here, dude. If the field is so certain through all the uncertainty in Denver that Marvin Mims is going to unlock the slate, why not take the same amount of uncertainty with Baker Mayfield and go with Trey Palmer? Like, help me out, dude.
Well, I'll say this. I'm going $800 more expensive with my favorite value of the slate, and I'm sticking to that wide receiver position. I'm just going to the rookie quarterback that targeted him multiple times in the preseason, 20 yards down the field. That's what they want to do. That's what they're going to do. And that is Alec Pierce against this Jacksonville Jaguars team.
That's valid.
I don't have a problem with Trey Palmer and your pivot off of Marvin Mims.
Yes, you do. You laughed at me.
Well, I'm not a fan of Trey Palmer, but your mindset in the scheme and everything that is there, it makes 100% sense. I just can't. Okay. I'm a Panthers fan.
You're Mayfield hurt me, man. You're backtracking, man.
Baker Mayfield hurt me, man. I just can't buy into him throwing deep. It just doesn't click in my brain. I do like Mike Evans to catch one, not two.
That's all you need.
Just one.
That's all you need.
60-yard touchdown, and you're basically there for him. But regardless, in this slate, you have Mingo at 32, you have Jaden Reed at 3K with now Christian Watson out, Tutu Atwell at 3K. I think the fact that Marvin Mims getting 23% is crazy considering how many 3K receivers we have. I mean, even Elijah Moore at 3,800, Zay Flowers at 4K. There are cheap receivers that are in roles that are going to be viable this upcoming week. I wonder how it's going to flip if Jeudy suits up. That will be a very interesting tell to see how strong things are with Marvin Mims in this matchup. Hilo, do you have anything else before we close out the show?
I'll drink to Alec Pierce as well, dude. This is a guy who approached 40% of the team's air yards with the starters in the preseason. We know kind of I keep saying we know. We don't know anything.
Nope.
We think we know. We think we know what this Indianapolis offense is going to look like. They played with pace in the preseason, like the top pace in the preseason of any other team. We think that Anthony Richardson is like this Greek god type physique and build, athleticism wise. And so he can do some interesting things, but we think that Michael Pittman is going to kind of continue this X-type wide receiver role. He saw almost 40% of the team's target market shares with the starters in preseason, but Alec Pierce is still just running those deep routes. He almost came down with that front pylon touchdown in preseason week 1 or 2. Can't remember which one, but slipped through his hands. He couldn't maintain possession, go into the ground. Had he scored that, we'd probably see his roster ship numbers bump 50% higher than they're going to be. I mean, they're going to be 2%. Maybe they jump to 3%. But yeah, I mean, I like that call a good bit. He's another guy in this lower tier of pricing that can pay off on one reception. I mean, that's not saying like if he catches 1 for 70 and 1, he's winning you a GPP. That's saying like, and then he gets some crumbs after that to reach the 100 yards and score. But yeah, I mean, he has a valid path to meaningful GPP ceiling.
I appreciate you backing my play, but be sure to check out both of our articles as they come to the site on Saturday, which is probably where we are dropping this one. You should check out everything we got going on at the 33rd team. We will have a top plays article as well, which is a combination of me, Hilo, Josh, and Ryan combining our minds to give you guys an easy, hey, this is our pool. Be sure to check out everything we got going on because it's going to be a great week 1, and we will come back to checking out Hilo, the $100 Millie Maker winner because of Baker Mayfield. We'll be able to go. I'll have my green screen up and I will take away the 33rd team and just put a picture of Baker Mayfield the entire time.
Yeah, you're buying a Baker jersey.
I will buy you a Baker jersey if you hit the Millie. Yeah, if you went outright with a Baker Mayfield lineup, I will buy you a Baker jersey. And
Let's go.
It to you, and I'll buy it for myself. We can match.
Let's go. We're doing the rest of the episodes this year in Baker Mayfield jerseys.
Oh my God, please.
Let's go. Yep,
I mean, I want you to win, but like
you heard it. Oh, you heard it here.
I'll do it. That's a fair bet. But all right, guys. See ya. Have a good one.